Okay, the next session that we have is on Integral Humanities by Professor Vladimir Yatsenko. He is a visiting professor at Auro University, Surat. I invite Vladimir to kindly share his thoughts with us.
Before Dr. Vladimir joins, some of the people wanted that I think she is not here, Kathleen in particular, when we said that we want to have the workshop mode. Maybe I will join, but I would submit it here that Dr. Vladimir is one who takes care of Science of Living course here. And Science of Living year, I think I referred to this yesterday, Science of Living year 1, Science of Living year 2, and then Foundations of Indian Culture. So it is he who coordinates, he is the center of these courses that are run in the university. Along with that, he is a scholar of Sanskrit and a scholar of Indian schools of philosophical thoughts. And keeping that in mind, his contribution is very substantial because the model that he has is the model of what is integral humanity. I wish that we had more time to see the whole of it, but whatever is there, that please do have a look at it so that we can think of incorporating that. When I mentioned about the workshop mode and having some sessions separately, where I thought that three components are important. One is that foundation course. Certain component of foundation course is already there. And then will be the components of humanities, components of social sciences, and components of fine arts combined in one. So these groups may better sit separately later, and then I would say that between 2 and 3. So we squeeze our lunch accordingly. I will request organizers to do that. Some of the colleagues wanted that if they wish to discuss the syllabus and pedagogy, then they should know about the vision of the school. As far as the articulation of vision is concerned, I thought that we should not condition the thinking of people by giving some kind of a vision. But if I have to, then I would suggest that tentatively at the moment, we want a school of liberal arts and human sciences, a premier school of liberal arts and human sciences, which develops learners holistically and integrally and transforms them into leaders of tomorrow. These are the basic components. Now let me repeat it. A premier because it will be in a state of evolution. We want it to be that our learners become leaders of tomorrow, but they become leaders of tomorrow only when we give them holistic and integral education. Add to it, our university follows a principle, and the principle is that because that is important for me to mention, because pedagogically we will have to keep that in mind. Principle of 50-30-20. That is 20% listening, 30% seeing, and 50% doing. Beyond the walls, within the walls, or maybe anywhere in the time and space that we can think of. So let us think of the syllabus on the basis of, one is the tentative vision that I have submitted to you, and second is the principle, pedagogical principle that is practiced in our university 20, 30 and 50. Sorry, Dr. Vladimir, please.
Good morning, everyone. I was given 20 minutes, so within 20 minutes I will have to finish the presentation. So let us start straightforward. I will not repeat the need in studies of humanities in a new way, in a new fashion. It was beautifully expressed here by the previous speaker, the roots, which is not visible, but which is determining all our approaches to life, and training, as we train animals. Now, our system today is more training than really educating. We are training people for recruitment into the society as workers. We are creating workers, skillful workers. It's maybe 60 or 70% training, a little knowledge of general, and information is available on Google. You don't need information anymore. Information is not a secret. So we have to shift to new paradigm. What education should be. So this is the quotation of Sri Aurobindo. I will have to read it. Those systems of education which start from an insufficient knowledge of man think they have provided a satisfactory foundation when they have supplied the student with a large or well-selected mass of information on various subjects which comprise the best part of human culture at the time. The school gives the material. It is for the student to use them. This is the formula. This is the formula today. But the arrow here is fundamental, says Sri Aurobindo. Information cannot be the foundation of intelligence. It can only be part of the material out of which the knower builds knowledge, the starting point, the nucleus of fresh discovery and enlarged creation. An education that confines itself to imparting knowledge is no education. We are imparting knowledge, we are imparting information, and some methodology how to get around it. So basically, we are far away from the ideals of education. I must say a few things before I kind of plunge into the humanities, where this model is coming from. It is coming from the Upanishadic view on the faculties of consciousness. When Bhrigu Rishi comes to Varuna, his father, and asks him, Adhihi Bhagavo Brahmeti, teach me, O Bhagavan, about Brahman, he hears the answer. Annam pranam chakshuh shrotram mano vacham iti. He hears the answer, what is Brahman? Brahman is annam, pranam, chakshuh, shrotram, mano vacham. The definition is body or matter, prana, pranic energy, chakshuh, seeing, vision, Shrotram, hearing, manas, mind, thinking, and vacham, speaking. Here we have all the humanities put together. So the very interesting insight what we got from this, we got in Auro studying these texts and trying to figure out what and how we could use this approach towards the studies of what we study, was that these faculties basically, in their own way, create the domains. When they are applied to life, they create the domains. Vision, applied, for example, to the creation of forms or to creation of visual arts, creates what we call the visual arts, yes? Or the sculpture, or the architecture. These are the domains, the results of the application of vision. So what is to be educated? The vision is to be educated. The hearing, the word, the mind, the feeling, and the body. The faculties are to be educated, not the domains. The domains are the results. So we thought that we could shift to the first-person inquiries method. Here the scheme shows very well. So we are usually presenting the domains. And instead of that, we propose to teach the approaches to knowledge rather than domains. I know it's a new topic altogether, but if you think deeper about it, you will see that approaches to knowledge which makes us knowledgeable. Why do we learn anything? To be efficient? That's it? To earn our money because we are efficient? Machine, robots? Robots will do it very soon, very fast and much better than we are doing it today. We are talking about this all the time, that we are shifted, our capacities are substituted by machines because machines are better with this. Machines are better in the third-person inquiry method. They will be better very soon. We have to find our subjective knowledge, the meaning of all this learning. Our aim of life, meaning of life, is hidden within the usage of these faculties. So, integral education is focused on the development of the faculties of consciousness and their applications rather than on the domains. Such an education where the studies of the humanities are introduced for the subjective studies of individual consciousness may become a new approach to education in the nearest future, and this will happen. Some of you will remember my words. This is going to happen, or we become totally technological. It is as if the domains as such are not important, but consciousness of the individual, which makes all the domains a means for self-discovery and therefore valuable and interesting. Now, if the domains do not play the role of our self-discovery, self-finding, our self-evaluation, our rediscovery of our true self-existence, then what they're for? Just to be functional? It's a training. It's not education. It's again back to training. I can imitate being sincere or being truthful. I can imitate being knowledgeable with nice words. I can learn words and speak to you right words. And you will be believing me? What is happening within me? Is it true to me, to myself, what I say to you? Is it really my truth, or I just learned it and started to believe in it? So this is a fundamental question of education. What is happening to us? To those who come to these institutions, to the universities, are we learning? Or we are teaching? The first principle of integral education, you know what? You will be surprised, some of you who do not know this, that nothing can be taught. How come? What is it all about? Nothing can be taught. It doesn't mean that nothing can be learned. Everything can be learned, but nothing can be taught. There is no imparting knowledge on others. Gurukula, the guru is the one who triggers in the shishya the interest to self-discovery and self-knowledge. He knows how it is happening because it happened to him. Shishya comes to him and learns from him directly. He learns from him, from his behavior, from his way of being. He reads him. He reads him subconsciously, consciously, and superconsciously. This was the old way of learning. So what is this approaches to knowledge in between? Look, there is nothing written there. First person inquiry, third, and in between this kind of link. What would you put there in between if you were to put something there? Interesting question, yeah? I left it open. I don't put anything there. Many times I want to put there second person inquiry. And you know the first, second and third person? It's a very psychological thing in which we constantly live. Second person is the person with whom we directly, immediately communicate. Now, not in some remote time, or not conceptually, not abstractly. It's a very concrete presence. I don't put it second person because we relate to ourselves through the second person inquiry. We speak to ourselves. We are actually two selves. One is knowing and other is wanting to know. This communication is taking place all the time. This is taken from Upanishads, of course. I have no time to speak more, but I would like to show you what we arrive at. So we have these major faculties of consciousness, which I already mentioned, and they are mentioned in dvandvas, interestingly enough. Manas and vach, always mentioned together, and prana and apana, or prana and anna, the vital and physical body. And there is Chakshuk and Shrotra. Kena Upanishad starts with mentioning all of them. By the way, Upanishads are dealing with these faculties constantly and mainly. And for them, there is no consciousness as an abstraction. It's a very concrete thing. And whatever Upanishad you open, just open and blindly put your finger in, you will find on that page mentioning these faculties. So they deal with consciousness as faculties of consciousness. There is no abstraction. It's concrete. Kena starts, kene shitam patati preshitam manaha. By whom this thought is flying to its aim, to its point. Who made it fly to its target? Who made this logic? Why we are looking to this outcome? Next question. Kenishita patati preshita mana kena prana prathama praiti yuktaha. By whom this prana is yoked, put into its work in the physical. Who made this breath, first breath, stick to this body when we are born? And we are living constantly with this vital force. Kena vacham imam vadanti, kenishitam vacham imam vadanti, by whom this speech is compelled to what we speak. Why do we speak what we speak? Somebody knows this? Why do I say what I say now? Who compelled me to say it? Look at these questions. Chakshuk Shrotram ka devo yunakti. Who is that God who unites seeing and hearing? What are these, seeing and hearing? Have we ever asked ourselves, what are we seeing, what are we hearing? What is the difference between these faculties? Why they are mentioned as the major faculties of consciousness? And then it goes on, explaining Brahman, and this is interesting. Yadvachana bhyuditam yenavaga bhyudyate tadeva Brahma. So what is not spoken by speech, but by which the speech is speaking, that is Brahman. Yachakshushana pashyati yena chakshunshi pashyati tadeva Brahma. Which is not seen by the eye, but by which the eye is seeing. That is Brahman. Yat shrotrena nashranoti yena shrotramidam shrutam, which is not heard by hearing, but by which the hearing is hearing. That is Brahman. Yan manasana namanute yena hurmanomatam tadeva Brahma, which is not thought by the mind, but by which the mind is thinking. That is Brahman. Now look, Sri Aurobindo explains that it is the mind of our mind, the life of our life, the sight of our sight. This is Brahman, constantly present right now, here, totally engaged. Absolutely. You are seeing, hearing, speaking, thinking, feeling. This is Brahman. Because of him you are doing it. It is the link to him. It is he who is present here in the form of consciousness. This is a fundamental vision. It is bypassing ahankara. There is no ahankara here. Nobody cares about ahankara. Brahman is present through the faculties of consciousness here right now, all the time, day and night. So these dvandvas are also very interesting. You see on the one side, manas and seeing, so to say, manas and vak, they are polarities. Chakshuk and shrotram, polarities. You can see that vak, the speech, and shrotram on one side. Shrotram is perceptive, vak is active. On the other side, you see seeing. Seeing is perceptive, whereas manas is active. Manas is imagining. It is active seeing, as it were. And there is prana and annam, or prana and apana, the duality of which is described as embodiment of Brahman in this world by these four in the corners. These four in the corners are called Brahma Chatushpad, Brahma on four pillars. It is by nama and rupa, notice, Shrotram and Vak is nama, Manas and Chakshuk is rupa. By nama and rupa, Brahman entered into this world. This is a profound knowledge. It's not a small knowledge. It's not the knowledge which belongs to the past, which we all already overcame with our, theories and our terminologies. We are lost in these terminologies. We lost the foundations of our own consciousness. So how to come back to it, and what does it have any value for humanities? Now, I would put them into this particular format where the self-knowledge of thinking and hearing, I cannot explain everything because of lack of time, of comprehensive cognition, but if you look at this first glimpse, you will see immediately that there is active or subjective approach and more objective or perceptive approach, as it were. These terms are not totally correct for this way of looking at it, but for the lack of better language, I'm just using them to distinguish them. So there is self-knowledge of thinking and seeing. Seeing is direct evidence of the truth way, his hearing is indirect. Who can define the difference between seeing and hearing psychologically? Can we do it? Can we think of this difference? I do not have time for this, but it would be very interesting to see. Seeing is direct. It's, as they say in Russian proverb, it's better to see once than to hear 100 times. Yeah? Because, hearing some politicians come and say to you something, and people only shout halva, halva. Why? Because you say halva, halva, and there is no sweetness in the mouth. So you may say many times, sweetness will not come. So this is talking, hearing, which is not concrete. Seeing is concrete, immediate. Hearing is indirect. But what is this hearing about then? It is going far beyond immediate perception of things, immediate cognition of the object. For example, you see the face beyond the glass, and the face tries to tell you something and you don't hear. You already have a contact, but you don't understand what face wants. The person wants something which is not available, which you cannot see. And it wants a glass of water. And you can't do it because you don't hear. It's not there. So everything which belongs to somewhere else in the wider context, in time and space, belongs to the domain of hearing. So we are deconstructing these approaches to faculties because we want to go deep and to see the relevance for the humanities. And you immediately see that Vach has something to do with language, with word. So it is most probably languages, linguistics, literature, poetry, you just name it. Everything which is in the domain of the speech. You can immediately see that thinking something has to do with and self-evaluation and subjective way of identifying oneself with the object of sense has something to do with psychology, whereas seeing something to do with looking at things as they are, self-knowledge in objective way, which is going far beyond the subjective perception of things as things are in the world. Most probably could be philosophy or vision as a philosophy. You could sense it. Feeling and prana has something to do with creativity, with an energy which artists put into form and create the beauty and the sense of beauty. And touch as the objective manifestation. Knowledge has something to do with science. Science as we know it today, about matter, about the outward world. Now, I put it here, I have to finish. I put here these approaches. These faculties, because they are there, they create those approaches to our reality. So self-knowledge, subjective, will be psychological approach. Unfortunately, I don't have time to explore with you. If I would ask you the difference between psychology and philosophy, I would like to hear your opinions, how you would be defining. And you will be surprised that you will come to the same definition of subjective self-knowledge, psychology, and objective self-knowledge, philosophy. You have to think about it. It's a deeper look. Then relation knowledge of the linguistic approach, the word, the intention. Thank you. And sociological approach, which is uniting all the bits and pieces in a meaningful fashion, or on the scale of space, and historical approach on the scale of time. How things relate, how they develop in time, how they are coherently, meaningfully changing in time. So after this view, after this deconstruction, after seeing that behind the faculties of consciousness, or behind the approaches to knowledge, there are faculties of consciousness which are responsible for these particular domains of the humanities. We come to this very interesting understanding of what is to be done in the field of humanities. How to educate that holistic being which was mentioned by previous speaker wonderfully. Because the humanities are invisible rules which are really creating the individual. So in order for, we can see domains and approaches. The domains psychology can be applied to any domain. So if you apply psychology to philosophy, to language, you can have these subjects. And we know them. You just Google them, you will find millions of hits on these subjects. You think they do not exist. They all exist. They may be named a bit differently, but they are there. You can see this history you definitely would agree immediately, because we know history of psychology, of philosophy, of art, and so on. But you have also other things, psychology of language, philosophy of language, and so on and so forth, philosophy of science, science of philosophy. You can have all these domains available, maybe named a bit different, but meaning the same thing. Why? Because they're related to our few limited number of faculties of consciousness. You think where these domains come from? Psychology, philosophy, why they're there? Linguistics, sociology, why are they there? Because we have these faculties. Because they relate to what we live. what we project, what we see, what we can perceive, what we have, what we can interact with. This connection is fundamental for us, for our understanding, because then we can connect the studies of humanities to the subjective studies of our consciousness. These becomes the domains for the development of our consciousness. Okay, I wanted to, of course, I wanted to read to you all of these one by one to show you how important they are, these 6 major domains, because they are really fundamentally important. But for the lack of time, I will leave here, and I would rather answer some questions, some objections. I know it's very revolutionary, but I would be interested.
Thank you very much for submitting this model. I think we need to work a little more minutely so that we can follow the framework on the basis of inputs that we have from different different schools and different thoughts. As I mentioned, that the vision of the school would be premier school that would aim at producing learners learners with integral education. So we need to think in terms of holistic, integral or holistic learners who would be the leaders of tomorrow. And I think we have discussed it, we have seen this, and then we need to work. This is what I'm saying for the benefit of the audience. Maybe Dr. Vladimir, it would be good if you throw some light about materiality of mind. When it comes in touch with objects, then knowledge is created, and then knowledge is created because mind is not the knower, self is knower in Ettari Upanishad. So the mind and self, they are not the correct terms, but if you throw some light from that Ettari Upanishad perspective, then the subsequent discussion that we shall have will be more directed. That manas and atma or buddhi, whatever, because people still confuse between man, manas, mind, brain, whereas the Upanishads are very clear about materiality. That's matter. When it comes in contact with the matter or objects, then some knowledge is generated. But that knowledge is generated through self, the consciousness that you were mentioning. If you can devote 2 minutes, then our next session would become slightly more purposeful.
Yes. First of all, manas in the Upanishads and the Veda, especially in the Samhita texts, is very different from manas what we know in Sankhya. Now, we are all in Sankhyaik paradigm. We think that manas is a sixth sense, or to say synthesizer of indriyas. Manas is dominating the indriyas. But in the Upanishads, it's not so. Manas is one of the faculties. One of the faculties equal to speech, to sight, to hearing, no domination. So there was another paradigm. We have a shift of paradigm. You know? We are coming to what we call mental structure of consciousness in Gebserian terms. Gebser is using these structures. Sri Aurobindo speaks about ages. So we are, according to Sri Aurobindo, in the subjective age. And that is where individual has to gain his consciousness through the faculties. Faculties are to be educated, not the information given how things are. He will discover what is about information, how the world is. You train his faculties, the discovery will be marvelous. But about the mind. In the Upanishads, the mind, yad etad hridayam manaschaitat. Samjnanam, ajnanam, vijnanam, prajnanam, medha drishti dhritir matir manisha jutih smritih sankalpa kraturasu kamo vasha iti sarvani yevaitani prajnanasya namadheyani bhavanti. These are the faculties of prajnana, of the mind. The mind has many faculties, starting with samjnana, ajnana, vijnana, and prajnana. And these are the fundamental secret operations of consciousness, about which Aurobindo speaks, but for the lack of time, I cannot really dwell on them. But if you are interested, there are articles written, I can send you the links, and you will read and see the immense richness of the studies of consciousness, which we can't even dream of. These are subjective studies, subjective true studies, not subjective, vitalistic or some kind of materialistic studies of behavior. It is much more valuable for the future, I think, as we acknowledge today. So India has all this richness and never studied it in this modern way. But it could be applied even to the humanities, as you can see. Because if we discover that behind every major domain or approach to knowledge, there is a faculty dominating it, which is generating it, which is dominating other faculties in that particular format, it creates completely different understanding of psychology, philosophy. We are becoming engaged. We are no more professors of philosophy. We are philosophers. We are not professors of psychology or historians of psychology. We are psychologists. We are historians. We are artists. We are speakers. We are not linguists anymore. We know how it is being done within our consciousness. We learned it. We can use it. It became ours. It is our knowledge. It belongs to us. For that purpose we study it, not for anything else. We have to bring this knowledge to activate it within the humanity. This is the next stage of education, when robots take over the third-person inquiry method. Makes sense? Too much, yeah? Little too much, I know. Yeah, please.
I'm Sachin Ketkar, and my objection to your presentation is that you are, on one hand, you are saying that there are terminologies, whatever. You yourself are selecting certain terminologies which belong to an epistemological system, one epistemological system among many that existed on the South Asian subcontinent, and turning it as if it's a universal one, a historical one, where it was contested, where it was made. Means Bauds and Jains would reject the idea of Atma or Brahma or whatever, and Varna or whatever. So you are converting something which is historical, one aspect of intellectual multiple traditions on the subcontinents, into a universal framework, which a gesture itself would look like an Orientalist gesture. Right? And while Aurobindo himself was contesting Orientalist narratives, he himself seemed to have been in some way perpetuating Orientalist biases. So do you think that in 2017, when we want to continue with this new Orientalist frameworks, or maybe open up the whole idea of intellectual traditions on the subcontinent as a pluralistic one? So what's your response to that?
Yes, I am not afraid to violate all the forms and, as you say, and bring one thing to another. I'm deconstructing totally the domains. They are not domains for me, they are approaches to knowledge, notice. I'm free from the domains. I'm not coming to the definition of psychology today. It's a study of the mind. Total wrong definition according to me. It's not study of the mind. It is altogether something else. Psychological approach is a discovery of the knowledge by identity, the capacity to bring in the object of sense or the image of things and to identify with it. This is the power of psychology. But I do not have enough time to really deconstruct everything and to show you the foundations. I would love us to do this fundamental work, to really go deep into the depth of the very thing. We are very much on the surface. What you're saying is taken from the structure of today's thinking, of the mental structure, how people today define by the mind things as they see them. And now this objection of the mind is very small objection. It's just technological objection about the words. I'm going beyond the words. I want to see the faculties to be activated. And they are there. You are using them right now. Only you are skipping it away because you have a formation which is easy to use now because you are educated in that way, and the forms of thinking about it are already ready to use. You have to re-engage, you have to engage in a new way. As Sri Aurobindo says, it has to be a starting point for your new discovery. Did you discover something new from your thinking right now? Or you just brought something you had already? Did you start a new venture? No, you didn't start a new venture. You brought something which is already known. Known by some people, some presented this way of thinking, and you think this is the way. And I say there is another way. Can you start your own? I want to hear what you think.
I think when we selectively construct traditions, there is always a danger of turning into sects. And humanism or humanities has to be beyond sectarian or perspective. And
Agree.
all forms of universalism has to be historicized and questioned. That's the space of humanities.
Disagree. First agree, second disagree.
What allows you to disagree is the space of humanities.
I disagree with the second, that it has to be historicized, put into some slot, and looked only in that particular context. It's a historical way of looking at it. It's important, but it is partial, 1/6 of the approach. But the first, I agree, yes, there is no sectarianism here. It's a universal knowledge. It belongs to all the humanity. There is no religion here. Notice Upanishads do not speak about gods or worshipping or meditating. They speak about faculties of consciousness, which we all share, which we all have. These are the universal faculties in the individual frame.